For what purpose does the gentleman from Texas, Mr. Castro, seek recognition?
Madam Speaker, I move that the House suspend the rules and agree to House Resolution 106.
The clerk will report the title of the resolution.
House Resolution 106, resolution denouncing female genital mutilation cutting as a violation of human rights of women and girls and urging the international community and the federal government to increase efforts to eliminate the harmful practice.
Pursuant to the rule, the gentleman from Texas, Mr. Castro, and the gentleman from Texas, Mr. Wright, each will control 20 minutes. The chair now recognizes the gentleman from Texas, Mr. Castro.
I ask unanimous consent that all members have 5 legislative days in which to revise and extend their remarks and include extraneous material on H.Res. 106, denouncing female genital mutilation or cutting.
Without objection.
And I yield myself such time as I may consume.
The gentleman is recognized.
I rise in strong support of this resolution. First, I want to thank my colleagues, Ms. Frankel and Mr. Perry, for introducing this important bipartisan measure. Every year, 3 million girls around the world are at risk of facing female genital mutilation or cutting, also known as FGMC. It's a horrific practice that mutilates girls without their consent and can lead to chronic, long-term health problems, and it can even be fatal. Madam Speaker, the United States rightly considers female genital mutilation or cutting a violation of women's rights. Here in the United States, it's a federal crime to perform this procedure on girls under the age of 18, and many other countries have similar laws banning the practice. But despite a rising global awareness about the egregious nature of FGMC, it is still a reality for millions of women around the world. It is estimated that over 200 million women and girls today have been subjected to this heinous mistreatment. We need to speak out against this injustice. That's why I'm pleased to support H.Res. 106, a resolution that denounces female genital mutilation cutting as a violation of the human rights of women and girls and urges the international community and the federal government to ramp up our efforts to eliminate this harmful practice. We need to do everything we can to combat the systemic mistreatment and injustice women face around the world. So, I ask my colleagues to join me in supporting this resolution to denounce FGMC, and I reserve the balance of my time.
Gentleman from Texas, Mr. Castro reserves. Gentleman from Texas, Mr. Wright is recognized.
I yield myself as much time as I may consume.
Gentleman is recognized.
Madam Speaker, I rise in support of this resolution to denounce female genital mutilation as a violation of the human rights of women and girls. I want to thank my committee colleagues, Congresswoman Lewis Frankel and Congressman Scott Perry, for introducing this resolution and for their sustained engagement on the issue. An estimated 200 million women and girls have been victims of FGM, which has dangerous and lasting health implications. The United States and many other countries and international organizations have called for an end to this highly invasive practice. Every year, the Department of State reports on the prevalence of FGM as part of the country reports on human rights practices. This is an important tool for raising awareness of where this abuse persists. This resolution urges the Department of State and USAID to go further and to incorporate anti-FGM efforts into their existing programming around the world. U.S. leadership is important to putting an end to this human rights violation. Speaking as the father of a daughter and a grandfather of 5 granddaughters, I urge my colleagues to support this measure, and I reserve the balance of my time.
Gentleman from Texas, Mr. Wright reserves. Gentleman from Texas, Mr. Castro is recognized.
Madam Speaker, I'd like to yield 5 minutes to the author of this resolution, the gentlelady from Florida, Ms. Frankel.
Gentlelady is recognized.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. And let me start by, first of all, thanking my colleague, Mr. Castro, for yielding time, and to Chairman Ingle and Ranking Member McCall for your bipartisan leadership. And I'm rising in support of a bipartisan resolution brought by myself and Representative Scott Perry of Pennsylvania, denouncing female genital mutilation and cutting, known as FGM. Every girl, no matter where she's born, has a right to be free of violence. And FGM is a barbaric violation of girls' and women's human rights. It's defined by the World Health Organization as any procedure that involves partial or total removal of the external female genitalia or other injury to the female genital organs for non-medical reasons. Madam Speaker, there is no developmental, religious, or health-related justification for this harmful practice. FGM poses immediate risks to girls' health, including severe pain and bleeding, difficulty in passing urine, infections, and even death due to hemorrhage or shock. The practice often leaves girls with long-term scars as well: post-traumatic stress disorder, chronic pain, HIV infection, cysts, abscess, genital ulcers. I could go on. Girls who have gone under FGM also face an increased risk of complications affecting their menstrual cycles, sometimes resulting in infertility. And as my colleagues pointed out, more than 200 million women and girls living today around the world, including women right here in the United States of America, have been cut. And now here's a horrible statistic. UNICEF predicts that if there is no reduction in this practice within the next 30 years, the number of girls being mutilated each year is going to grow from 3.6 million a year to 6.6 million a year. And Madam Speaker, I want you to know that with resources and advocacy, we can stop this horrific practice. Just look at Jaha, a very, very courageous young woman from Gambia who was a week old when she was mutilated and forced into marriage at age 15. Now, she escaped that marriage. She could have easily fallen into despair. Instead, she spoke out because she never wanted her daughter or any other child to go through the suffering of FGM. And because of her hard-fought efforts, FGM is now banned in her home country. And like Jaha, we must all do more. So today I'm asking the United States Congress to pass this bipartisan resolution denouncing female genital mutilation, recognize it as a violation of the human rights of women and girls, affirming the importance of ending its practice for the safety and security of women, and calling upon the international community to increase its efforts to accelerate the elimination, and urging our State Department of the United States to incorporate this into gender programming, coordinated efforts to eliminate FGM. Today, we're going to send a clear message that this practice must stop. And the United States, as one of the largest donors in the global health programs, can help end this cruel practice. There are things that we can do, like allocating resources annually to continue the efforts to eliminate FGM, codifying the U.S. strategies to prevent and respond to gender-based violence. And we must, I want to say this emphatically, we must restore funding to the UN Population Fund, the world's largest program to end FGM that works with 17 countries and more than 3 million survivors. Madam Speaker, ending FGM will help millions of girls have a better life. And when they have a better life, that means that their communities will be more prosperous and more peaceful. Because when women succeed, the world succeeds. It is imperative that we end female genital mutilation now. And I thank my colleagues for joining me in support of this critical resolution, and I yield back.
Gentleman from Texas, Mr. Castro reserves. Gentleman from Texas, Mr. Wright is recognized.
Yes, I do.
Was he reserved?
In closing, I again want to thank Representative Frankel and Representative Perry for their persistence in this fight. Every case of female genital mutilation is one too many. This resolution calls on the nations of the world to do more to stop this awful violation of the dignity and safety of women and girls. It deserves our unanimous support. Now I yield back the balance of my time.
Gentleman from Texas, Mr. Wright yields back. Gentleman from Texas, Mr. Castro is recognized.
Madam Speaker, we all agree that female genital mutilation or cutting is a horrific form of child abuse and a violation of women's rights. The resolution before us today is a signal to the rest of the world that the United States Congress is paying attention to this issue. We stand with the millions of women who are still being subjected to this practice, and we will not stop fighting for their right to dignity and respect. So I urge my colleagues to join me in supporting H-Res 106, and I yield back the balance of my time.
Gentleman yields back. The question is, will the House suspend the rules and agree to House Resolution 106? Those in favor say aye. Those opposed, no. In the opinion of the chair, 2/3 being in the affirmative,
I would ask for a recorded vote of the yeas and nays.
the gentleman is recognized. Does the gentleman request the yeas and nays?
I do, Madam Speaker.
The yeas and nays are requested. All those in favor of taking this vote by the yeas and nays will rise and remain standing until counted. A sufficient number having risen, the yeas and nays are ordered. Pursuant to Clause 8 of Rule 20, further proceedings on this question will be postponed.